Our next presentation is entitled Raiders of the Lost Artifact, a case for returning artifacts to their country of origin. Please welcome Abigail Meyer.
We were exhausted, tired from a busy vacation, sightseeing the streets of the Roman Forum, tasting the souvlaki in Greece, hearing the Muslim call to prayer in Istanbul. Despite the amazing vacation my family had, all we wanted now was to get on the plane and sleep. But then came the dreaded moment. My grandfather's luggage was pulled aside by the airport security. While we were visiting the Acropolis in Athens, my grandfather stashed a simple stone near the Parthenon in his pocket, doing the same at other stops on our journey. As we were getting ready to depart Europe, the security officer went through the examination, removing the stones from my grandfather's suitcase. "But they're only rocks," my grandfather pleaded. But the officer was quick to reply, "No, sir, they're artifacts." So what is an artifact? We've all likely heard of the Parthenon marbles, the bust of Nefertiti, King Tutankhamun's tomb. An artifact is typically a man-made object designed for a specific people group for historical, cultural, or religious reasons. Artifacts can be found worldwide, providing insight into a specific culture or country. For centuries, there have been extensive debates surrounding the ownership of artifacts. Countries want to protect their heritage, but their artifacts have been scattered across the globe, trapped by the hands of wealthy collectors or private museums. Many say that countries are too uptight and need to accept where their artifacts are being held, while others will not rest until their heritage is returned. Why should another country have ownership of the things that impact our identity? Whose perspective holds the truth? Although many argue the artifacts being held in an alien country allows more people to have exposure to history, I argue that all artifacts must be returned to their country of origin, because artifacts hold deep contextual and cultural meaning, and withholding artifacts is withholding the rights to history. We are all familiar with the biblical principle stated in Exodus 20:15, "You shall not steal." An artifact is included in a country's property. Therefore, to take it without consent is morally wrong and disobeying God. There are three major forms of incorrect ownership that I will be discussing. The first is looting during warfare. Soldiers are expected to refrain from the pillage and seizure of religious and artistic property. There are countless examples of this throughout history, one being in 1868 under the leadership of Sir Robert Napier, a British officer. The soldiers were taught these morals, but still they pillaged Makhtala to Ethiopia to massive extents, disregarding the instruction from their leaders. Looting is not an inevitable part of warfare. Rather, it is negligence of the legal and ethical standards. The second occurs during colonization. In 1799, under British colonization in Egypt, the Rosetta Stone was discovered on Egyptian soil, but it's been housed in the British Museum ever since. Colonization is a common occurrence in history. However, the injustices committed during the efforts are unnecessary. The 1970 UNESCO Convention states that if a foreign country takes power and control of another country, that object is not owned by the controlling country. Rather, it is still owned by the land of the original country. People suffered enough pain, and taking artifacts that highlight their cultural heritage is outright immoral. The pillage of artifacts during colonization worsens the cruelties by withholding cultural ties. The final category is the spider web of illicit artifact exchange, occurring through the illegal buying and selling of artifacts through backdoor dealings. This trade prospers because of the minimal legal presence and the veiled eyes of large museums and trade rings. This web is so complex that it can lose the true value of an artifact, simply reducing it to a monetary asset. This scandalous system makes it easier for museums to retain artifacts with minimal liability. The illegal trade of artifacts is unethical because it blurs the lines of ownership, making restitution very complicated. The Metropolitan Museum of Art was recently ordered to return dozens of artifacts to Egypt after recent investigation showed that they're illegally bought and sold to the museum. Since it is now clear that artifact relocation is wrong, it follows that every country must return their artifacts because withholding artifacts is damaging to the culture of a country. Through these artifacts, religions, traditions, and many more significant things are passed down from generation to generation, proving the need to protect these artifacts to maintain remembrance and practice of cultural heritage. Artifacts provide a link between history and the current citizens of the country. This link is broken when an artifact is wrongfully relocated. Despite these arguments, those who oppose worry that if every country requests its artifacts back, then museums would cease to exist, and the education that museums offer would be lost. Craig Childs, an author of archaeology, demands the return of all artifacts, regardless of condition, location, significance, or quantity, to their exact original location. Yes, artifacts belong in their lands, in their homes, in their cultures. But this does not mean the extent of stripping museums of their contents until they're empty. In an interview I conducted with Dr. Zahi Hawass, a prominent advocate for restitution in Egypt, he calls for the return of significant artifacts, such as the Rosetta Stone, the bust of Nefertiti, and the Dendera Zodiac. A solution to the empty museum problem is returning the artifacts that have historical, cultural, or religious significance, allowing museums to retain those artifacts that the country of origin has an abundance of, opening an educational window. For example, a museum could retain things used in daily life or household items such as a Greek pot or a Native American arrowhead. History should not be confined to the stale halls of foreign museums, cluttered with an array of artifacts from all over the world. The museum experience seems pleasant, but those visiting the museum do not realize the decades of despairing countries yearning to see their artifacts once more, only for their hopes to be crushed by powerful museums. On the other hand, imagine the warm sun reflecting off centuries-old marble onto your skin, the rustle of a summer breeze through olive trees, and the chatter of foreign languages. Just a few feet away is the actual site itself, within view from the museum, as you experience one of the most phenomenal ruins of the ancient world. History should be alive in its element. What if something so foundational to the core of our nation's identity, like the Declaration of Independence, was housed halfway across the world? We would be desperate to seek its return. Artifacts tell stories that shape our identity. We must not let people lose the things that tie them to their heritage. Will we stand by and wait for someone else to step up and make things right? Or will we join together to restore a nation's right to their history? Thank you.